The Forum Boarium reeked of whetstone and cattle muck. Under that open sky, three matched pairs of armored fighters stepped into a rough ring. They weren't soldiers. They were enslaved men, drilled to kill and be killed, not for fame, but for a funeral. In 264 BC, Decimus Junius Brutus Scaeva had just laid his father to rest, and to mark it he put on what Livy later remembered as Rome's earliest noted gladiator bout. This wasn't a citywide show. It was a mourning duty, the Roman Munis, literally a service owed to the dead. The blood they shed wasn't entertainment. It was a grave offering. That practice drew on Campanian rites, where people were sacrificed at tombs. In southern Italy, especially in places like Capua and among the Samnites, the custom morphed. Feast day duels moved from killing to fighting, where the struggle mattered more than the fatal blow. Tertullian would later frame it as blood spilled for the sake and satisfaction of the dead, even as bystanders were clearly watching for thrills. By the late 3rd century BC, those duels left the funeral and joined festivals. They got folded into Rome's Ludi, state games dedicated to Jupiter, often rolled out when the city felt under pressure. Senators voted money for them, and what started as a family ritual became a public event. Temporary timber stands gave way to stone amphitheaters as the Republic wound down. Blood on sand became part of the civic schedule, budgeted and written into the year. You could say Rome set its rules in masonry as much as in laws. As the empire grew, the program expanded. By the 1st century CE, crowds were watching not only people fighting people, but forced clashes with wild animals. When it was staged as a hunt, they called it a venatio. When it served as an execution, it was Damnatio Ad Bestias. Justice and spectacle got mixed together. The victims could be criminals, prisoners of war, even rebellious enslaved people. They were thrown at lions, leopards, or bears. Beasts kept hungry, so the kill came fast. Ambitious men like Pompey saw how powerful a show could be and arranged elaborate scenes of men against animals. Some fighters, Bestiarii, trained or were compelled and paid to take on the creatures for cheers. You can see it in art from the early empire, a spear braced as a lion leaps, or a netman twisting away from a panther. In Roman Britain, archaeologists dug up a male pelvis, likely a gladiator's, mauled by a cat the size of a lion. Seneca tells us that some condemned chose suicide over being used to amuse a crowd. This was intentional humiliation. Hunger itself became a weapon. Animals weren't just starved to speed the kill. They were used to grind human beings down. Quick pause. I'm curious what you think. Which of these shows, funeral duels, beast hunts, Naumachiae, or mythic tortures, most clearly strips life down to state control? Drop a thoughtful comment, tell me why, and how you see public theater shaping power. And if unraveling the guts of ancient empires is your thing, hit subscribe on channel name so you don't miss the next deep dive. Rome didn't stop at sand. It flooded spaces and fought on water. Naumachiae were staged naval battles in engineered basins, often at an emperor's command. Julius Caesar pulled off the first in 46 BC near the Tiber. He dug a fake lake and reenacted a Tyrian versus Egyptian sea fight. The ships were actual warcraft, the weapons were real, and the crews were condemned men with no hope. Augustus took that concept and blew it up in 2 BC. He built a basin about 1,800 by 1,200 Roman feet and piped in water from the Aqua Alsietina. On that surface, 30 warships, packed with thousands of convicted prisoners, smashed into each other while spectators shouted from the banks. Sometimes it wasn't an artificial pool. In AD 52, Claudius drained Lake Fucine and celebrated with a navy show where the fighters saluted him with morituri te salutant, meaning, those who are about to die salute you. By the time Titus opened the Colosseum, these sea battles had become shorthand for imperial extravagance. Some scholars think Titus may have borrowed Augustus's nearby basin for nautical fights during the dedication of the amphitheater. Under Domitian, there were likely similar spectacles inside the Colosseum itself, when the arena floor was temporarily flooded. The tradition didn't die with them. Under Trajan, In AD 109, the Naumachia Vaticana ran near the Vatican Hill. Then came noon in the Colosseum. The hour for state killing turned into theater. Executions got staged as myths. Martial, who saw Titus's opening games firsthand, writes about an Orpheus imitator whose music couldn't pacify the animals. The legend of Pasiphaë was made into flesh, with either a woman or a man dressed as one. Thrown to a beast. Fire had its role too. The Tunica Molesta was a pitch-soaked shirt strapped to a body and lit, sometimes advertised as the death of Mucius Scaevola. Tertullian seethes about men burned alive and tied upright, jeered at as kindling men. In those arenas, stories weren't read. They were acted out with real suffering. Seneca said he came home from the games worse, craving more, greedy, vain, and yes, more cruel, just from being around that crowd. So, what does it tell us about a culture when fun is engineered to degrade, dominate, and make people numb to pain?